War has always been part of human history, but some wars went far beyond battlefields and generals. They destroyed entire civilizations. They erased cities from the map. They killed millions, not only soldiers, but civilians, children, and entire generations. These conflicts were not just about victory, they were about survival. This is the story of the top 10 most brutal wars in human history. 10. The Punic Wars, 264 to 146 BC. The Punic Wars were fought between two ancient superpowers, Rome and Carthage. For more than 100 years, these empires clashed across the Mediterranean. Battles were fought on land and at sea. Entire armies were destroyed. The most famous commander of the war was Hannibal, who led elephants across the Alps to invade Italy. Yet despite his victories, Carthage slowly weakened. When Rome finally won, it showed no mercy. Carthage was burned to the ground. Its population was enslaved. The city was erased from existence. This was not conquest, it was annihilation. 9. The Mongol Conquests, 1206 to 1368. Under Genghis Khan, the Mongols created the largest land empire in history. But their rise was built on terror. Cities that surrendered were spared. Cities that resisted were destroyed completely. Men were executed. Women and children were slaughtered. Entire populations vanished. The Mongols used fear as a weapon. News of destruction traveled faster than their armies. Historians estimate over 40 million deaths. In some regions, forests grew where cities once stood. 8. The 30 Years' War, 1618 to 1648. This war devastated Europe, especially Central Europe. What began as a religious conflict between Catholics and Protestants turned into a brutal struggle for power. Armies lived off the land, villages were looted, crops were burned. Civilians died from hunger and disease more than from combat. In parts of Germany, up to half the population died. When the war ended, Europe was exhausted, broken, and forever changed. 7. The Napoleonic Wars, 1803 to 1815. Napoleon Bonaparte turned Europe into one massive battlefield. Entire nations were mobilized. Millions of men were conscripted into armies. Battles like Austerlitz and Borodino were enormous and deadly. Soldiers fought in close formations, facing artillery and musket fire. More than 6 million people died. These wars showed the world what modern total warfare could look like. 6. The Taiping Rebellion, 1850 to 1864. One of the deadliest wars in history, yet rarely discussed. In China, a massive civil war erupted when Hong Xiuquan claimed to be the brother of Jesus Christ. The rebellion tore the country apart. Cities were captured and recaptured. Mass executions were common. Famine followed everywhere the armies marched. Historians estimate 20 to 30 million deaths. It was one of the bloodiest conflicts humanity has ever seen. 5. World War I, 1914 to 1918. World War I introduced a new kind of horror. Industrial weapons turned battlefields into killing zones. Soldiers lived in muddy trenches for months. Poison gas burned lungs. Machine guns cut down entire waves of men. Millions died for just a few meters of land. By the end, over 16 million people were dead. The war destroyed empires and planted the seeds for an even worse conflict. 4. World War II, 1939 to 1945. World War II was the deadliest war in human history. Entire cities were bombed into ruins. Civilians became targets. The Holocaust murdered 6 million Jews. Atomic bombs destroyed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. More than 70 million people died worldwide. No war before had caused such total devastation. Humanity crossed a line it could never uncross. 3. The Chinese Civil War, 1927 to 1949. This war decided the future of China. It was fought between nationalist and communist forces, but civilians suffered the most. Villages were destroyed, food supplies collapsed, mass executions were common. More than 8 million people died. When it ended, China emerged as a new nation, but at an enormous human cost. 2. The Congo Wars, 1996 to 2003, often called Africa's World War. Multiple nations were involved. Resources fueled violence. Child soldiers were used. Civilians faced starvation, disease, and mass killings. More than 5 million people died, mostly non-combatants. It remains one of the most brutal and overlooked wars in modern history. 1. The An Lushan Rebellion, 755 to 763. This rebellion shattered China's Tang dynasty. What began as a revolt turned into catastrophe. Cities collapsed, famine spread. Entire regions were emptied of people. Historians estimate 36 million deaths, nearly 1/6 of the world's population at the time. No other war had such a devastating impact relative to global population. It stands as the deadliest conflict in human history. In blood, sacrifice, and hard lessons. Every war you've seen today shaped the world we live in. If you want more powerful stories from the past, battles, empires, and moments that changed history, this is History in Minutes. Subscribe and learn history 1 minute at a time.